Can you find purpose after losing someone you love? I believe the answer is absolutely yes. After my daughter Heidi died from fentanyl poisoning, I was in shock that something so terrible and heartbreaking could happen. It changed my life forever. But as I moved through my grief, I began to see God reveal to me a new purpose I'd never imagined. Today I'm going to share Heidi's story and how God brought purpose out of my deepest pain. It is my hope that you will begin to see that He can do the same for you. It was February 27th, not long before the lockdown in 2020, and my daughter Heidi was in jail for about a month and a half at this point. She and her boyfriend decided to move to Tennessee in 2018, moving away from here in Newport Richey, Florida, where I live, by the way, and raised her and her 3 brothers. So she had made some decisions before this point, and him. They were drug related. They were avid marijuana smokers and other things I will not get into right now. But they had their children removed from their custody the summer before this. And so she ended up in jail over some other bad decisions, if you want to call it that. And he was not in jail yet. So we were communicating, and she told me that, first of all, that he had plans to turn himself into jail and then bail himself out from jail and using their income tax return money. Another thing that Heidi told me very clearly was that she realized, was finally admitting to me, okay, because we didn't have the greatest relationship, mostly based off of her own choices. She made it clear to me that she realized she should no longer be in a relationship with her boyfriend anymore, and that she wasn't going to do it, and that it needed to stop, and that it was very toxic. So, with that said, on the 27th, I got a call from his mom telling me, freaking out, saying, Julie, he didn't just bail himself out. He also bailed out Heidi. She was freaking out because I don't even know all the reasons, but she was freaking out. When that happened, I had the worst gut feeling I've ever had in my life, y'all. It was like a loud alarm going off inside of me, warning me that serious danger was just around the corner. It really riled me up, really got me upset, of course. I got off the phone. I called my best friend, who was able to help me calm down. And then shortly after I hung up the phone with her, Heidi called me. And I could tell she was under the influence of something, but she didn't admit to that. She was acting like she could trust her boyfriend again, saying he was being so nice. We had a long and hard conversation that day, and we talked about a whole lot of different things. One of the things that just came out of my mouth was, did she know that Toby Mac's son had died from a fentanyl overdose? Toby Mac is a popular hip-hop artist, if you don't know that. Christian hip-hop artist. Pop artist, whatever. So anyway, and she said, yeah, I know that, acting like she would have nothing to do with it. But little did I know that this would be my very last conversation I would ever have with my daughter, Heidi. 2 days later, in the middle of the night, they decided to party just one more time because there was evidence of that. And in the middle of the night, she overdosed on fentanyl, was flown to a Nashville hospital, and the next morning, it was Sunday, it was church, I saw 3 missed phone calls on my phone. I was looking at it, and they were area codes from Tennessee, near where they lived, so I had hopes they were from Heidi, and that her boyfriend had actually bought her a phone. So I went to church. I just said, I'm going to call these numbers after church, and after we pulled up to our house here, and I called the numbers. My husband got out of the car. My son Jeremy and his girlfriend happened to be outside doing something, and when I called that number, it was the phone call you never want to get. It was the phone call that would change my life forever. The woman said, your daughter overdosed on fentanyl, and she's unconscious and extremely non-responsive. I got angry right away. Um, but after that, I never really got angry again because I felt like I couldn't afford to. But I did. My immediate response was to be very angry at her boyfriend. And he was in large part to blame for her death. He ended up in prison about a year ago and has 14-year sentence, all in relationship to her death. I'm not going to go more into that story right now. But moving forward, I was in shock. We found out later that day from her nurse that it had chilled her body to try to stop the damage and would be warming it back up the next morning in hopes of her recovery. So we left as soon as we could that day, my husband and my oldest son, Jeremy, and I, driving all night to get to the hospital. When I walked into her room and saw her lifeless body with tubes connected to her, very inflamed, her beautiful blue eyes that had white rays going through them, dilated in pinpoint position, I kind of knew, without knowing, and still having hope, I kind of knew she was no longer with us. And the next day, I elected to have them do a test where they said if there's no more blood flow to her brain, she would be declared legally brain dead. So they did the test the next day, and she came back as no more blood flow to her brain. She was declared legally brain dead. So I said goodbye to my daughter, with the nurse taking a picture of her hand in mine and getting some lockets of her long brown hair, to then have to wonder, how was I going to tell her 4 children who were in a foster family and we were going to visit them after we left her? How was I going to tell them that their mother was no longer with us and that they would never see their mom again? This is my short form of my story I've told many times in schools, to students, at church, and other places in my community. I do have other videos on here that you can hear more of the story. There's a documentary that's public under one of my playlists that you can watch of my husband and I both sharing more in depth things from her childhood, etc. But I knew you all need to know at least the death of my daughter, the sudden death, surprising death. We knew she was into marijuana. There was some knowledge that some other things, basically she was dealing with her depression of her children being taken away by going to some more serious drugs than just marijuana, is kind of the way I put it. But again, I want to move into what happened with me. And again, in a summarized version, but a very important version that has to do with where my life shifted. And it strongly, you all, has to do with what I determined in my mind fairly quickly after she died. A little more of the story, it was during 2020. The whole world was caught up in COVID and the lockdown and deaths and all the stuff. I don't even need to go there. My world was not about that. Yeah, I was living through that. Yeah, it was there. My world was about my daughter and trying to get custody of my grandkids. And that's another part of the story I'm not getting directly into. I might touch on it some because it's a huge part of the story. That her 4 children we were trying to get custody of. Everybody was pulling for that, and we were the only family that was willing to do that. We ended up having to let go of them, and they were adopted out of the family the next year. So I've suffered death of life-changing loss of somebody who died, my daughter, and also having to deal with living loss of live people who you are estranged from and having to learn to work through that. So just say. Okay, but another thing that was happening is I was in a speaking program. I really wanted to become a speaker. I wanted to share God's word. I wanted to help people. I'm a teacher at heart, and I am an ordained minister. I was ordained back in 2017. So there's a whole story behind that, but I really wanted to speak, but I had a lot of complexes about myself based on childhood and family shutting me down and not feeling like I had a voice. So I was going through a speaking program through a man named Steve Hopper, and it was really good. It was going on during this time. Now, he didn't stop the program because of COVID, but he said, we're going to elongate it. We're going to do more training over online, and then you're going to do your live speech when, things lighten up and things open up, which we did in June. So I'm sharing this for a reason, because I was writing a story about thriving through troubled times. It had to do with our marriage crisis that happened right before this, just so you all know. A huge marriage crisis happened before this. Not going to go into that, but things got resolved. We got back together. We're a miracle story. Our marriage is a miracle story. And I was writing, briefly about that in my story in this speech that I was making. But as soon after she died, as I'm thinking of moving forward to become a speaker, I determined I have to tell my daughter's story. I even asked the teacher, Steve Hopper, should I change my story to Heidi? And he said, no, not yet. And then I kind of knew, and I wasn't ready to even write that or change it. But that's how strong it came out in me. I have to tell my daughter's story. Now, I didn't know much about fentanyl. I knew Toby Mac's son died from it. I knew it was bad. I learned the spelling of it. Wanted nothing to do with drugs before that. So for me to shift, I was like this with drugs. Don't talk to me about it. I don't want to hear about it. I hate commercials on it. Now it shifted to, I got to tell her story. And then I learned more and I got more involved, and I began to see even more how serious this is an epidemic. If you don't know this, you probably do. It is literally an epidemic. I would say it's just as serious or more real than COVID was. Just one way to put it in my mind, okay? Because people are literally dying every day. It's gone down some because of knowledge and education and Narcan and all kinds of other things. But there's still way too many people dying from it. So that was my first lane of new purpose that came out of her death. Okay, and I love using my hands. Y'all probably know that. But anyway, it was that first thing. I got to tell her story. Little did I know how really important that was until I kept learning and growing, but how much that was going to help me with my grief. Huge help with me, because I'll be honest, COVID is part of the reason why. We all go through different experiences, but I didn't have much support, and I saw, that, hardly anybody was even asking me about Heidi or how I was doing, or can I help you or pray for you or anything like that. I just didn't have hardly any support, and I had hardly anybody asking me about our daughter, okay? And a lot of it was because of COVID. So I needed to be able to tell her story. Yes, to help others. Yes, to bring awareness. That's a purpose right there. But I needed to tell my story for me, okay? And this will play into my next video, which will be like a part 2 of this one, where I am going to be more specific about what things you can do to help you find purpose, or to maybe move into your purpose, and with or without knowing it ahead. Like I said, I didn't imagine these things happening in my life ever before this, but then they began to become my new life, my new normal. Okay, so the next video, stay tuned for this, will be more specific, kind of pulling things out of my own story and other things I've learned through this aspiration to be a specialist in grief, basically. Okay, so stay tuned for that, right? So that was my first lane. Now I'm using my other hand for the other thing that emerged. Not as quickly as the story part, but almost as quickly, is that I want to help people with grief. There's not enough people helping people with grief. And there isn't. Now, I ended up doing a summit a year later. I signed on for a year contract with a coach. I needed that for me. I needed that so that I could learn how to be a coach and have a coaching business. And I needed that for the new purpose God was bringing me into. So those two things were two new lanes of purpose, or avenues of purpose, whatever, in my life, because I never would have dreamed actually wanting to talk about a drug. Okay? But when your daughter dies from it and you find out it's an epidemic and you see how dangerous it is, and it's being put in all kinds of things out there without people knowing it, yes, there's people that knowingly bought it, like her boyfriend, that's why he's guilty, but there's so many people taking things and they don't even know it's in there. So when you learn about that, yeah, but that's what happened, something I never would have imagined. Okay? The second thing that I can look back and say I had a drawing towards grief, but my mom died the year before that, but it wasn't my life-changing loss, y'all. When my mom died, it didn't thrust me into grief ministry. It was after Heidi died that I was moved into grief ministry. Grief as a way to help people, and I now have 5 different ways I help people through grief. One of them is through this channel that you're watching right now, because I talk about grief and loss, and I have many, many, many videos about grief and loss. And if you think of another topic you want, please tell me, okay? Because I want to bring forth real information to people who have lost a loved one. All right, so, and I also do workshops and life coaching 101, support groups too. So those are all a part of what I do, as well as officiating services. Okay? So those are the 2 things, the new avenues of purpose that emerge in my life. Okay? Going back to the speaking one, upon the leading of the Lord and the Holy Spirit. If you're not a born-again believer, you may not understand this, but this is a part of my walk with God. God wants a relationship with us, not just religion, not just believing in Him, but really knowing Him. And I've known Him since I was 17, okay? But gotten even closer to Him after my loss. Yes, that's another thing that's emerged. But with that, He began to lead me. I had a hairstylist. He led me to a certain hairstylist. I told her how I want to share my daughter's story. I want to bring education and awareness about fentanyl and how dangerous it is. She told me about a group called ASAP that she was involved with, and I began to attend their meetings online. And then that organization led from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. Okay, it never put me into big audiences yet. I mean, I do hope to one day do that, and I believe God's calling me to that one day. But it led me to eventually begin have the open door that I've had for 3 years now, every 6 weeks at Gulf High School, where my kids went and Heidi graduated from the local school. I am allowed to share with an after-school program where kids who get in trouble with drugs or fighting, they can go into this program and reduce their suspension days. And so parents encourage it, but the students still kind of choose it. And so I get to go in, they give me the whole hour, and I share her story, like what I shared with you basically, and then 3 points to, going forward in life and succeeding in life and not dying from fentanyl. And then I move into exactly why it's so dangerous, Narcan, and so forth. So they give me the whole hour, and I've been doing this for 3 years. That was a door that opened by my being directed by God and being obedient and taking bold steps to do things that were totally different than I had ever imagined. Now it was like this drive. But it started with that determination, okay? So I want to share that with you so you know exactly what happened with me. So that has actually calmed down more lately. I'm not being led to attend those meetings, but it led to a round table. It led to conferences where I was able to speak and have a table. And, there's just many things. I shared in my church briefly at one point, a couple times actually. I've been interviewed, on podcasts, and I still would like to do more podcasts. So just it led to many different things, y'all. Okay, it's definitely part of me, and that it's on my website, juliek.org, by the way, if you want to check out the website. And then this other lane became even stronger and stronger and stronger, and I do know it's my lifeline calling. Absolutely, it's weird, but I have the grace. I want to share on it. It's a lot to do with that, but it's your calling, it's your purpose when you still get joy and you still have peace and you have this, it's fulfilling to you. even though it's hard. I can't be a doctor. I can't be a surgeon. I could never do that, but they do it and they like it and they're fulfilled in it. So we all have our different things, but this emerged out of my pain. And I'm not saying the same thing is going to happen with you in that big way like it did with me, but definitely you can find new purpose from your pain. And I just, I'm driven in my heart and in my spirit and to, continue to do this. So yes, I do it for free, and yes, I talk to people, and yes, I also am a coach. I'm very reasonable with that. I just did a workshop at my first funeral home because the Lord was moving me to go to funeral homes. I didn't understand how to do that, but He showed me. Again, that was like a big hurdle for me to get over. And I did my first officiating of a funeral several months back, and it was blessed, and I want to do more. Maybe not every day all the time, but I want to do more. And then 2 weeks ago did a workshop where I actually, was blessed financially from that, and many people got helped. It turned out really good. And so bottom line, these are some of the things that God's been doing with me. It's been like a journey. It's part of my grief journey because as I've helped others, it's helped me. And because I love to teach, I want to learn to help others, but I teach myself. I had to have counseling through this. I had to have help through this. A lot of pain, a lot of stuff. This is just touching on my journey, but I want you all to know my journey and to just know that you can find purpose from pain. Now, if you haven't already watched this is a series. This is actually the third principle in my series. The first principle is movement, the second one is acceptance, and the third one is purpose. I realize how important it is that so many people feel stuck in their grief, right? Have you felt stuck in your grief? Sometimes it's just a feeling, or sometimes we really, really are stuck. But even if we really are stuck, it doesn't mean we're stuck forever. So we want movement, okay? When you find purpose, even just volunteering in the name of whoever died, or, they were so into this organization, let me begin to volunteer or do something or give a gift towards that organization. That is a simple, important step. So I'll get more into it on my next video, but I want you to know that when you do this and you begin to look, when you're ready to do it, okay? When you're ready, that's why it's the third principle. It's not the first. We got to get moving, period. And when we first get moving, it's totally self-centered, and that's not wrong. It's very much about self-care and finding things to help us to cope, right? And cope, hope, and heal is what I'm all about, okay? And then the acceptance is huge. I'm not going to go into that. I have 2 videos on that. Okay, the first one, why acceptance is so important, and the second one, how. What are the things I need to do or think or believe and understand in order for me to find acceptance, okay? So please go back and watch the series. There's a playlist. It will be in this description. Actually, I'll put the playlist at the end of this video. So look for the playlist, we're coming to an end right here. So click on this to get into the playlist so then you can save it and watch it as you have time. I strongly encourage you to go through that whole playlist. This is very pivotal. It's kind of like, it's a really thing that God's given me, and the wisdom that it's coming together in this map. It's called map, like, windy path, and giving you a map down that windy path to the destination of coping and hoping and healing, and finding new purpose in your life. This is all a journey. And so I want to empower you and help you. And if you need one-on-one help, I want to invite you to click the link in the description that's right up at the top, or the QR code on the banner of my channel, and set up a 1-hour consult for only $30 to just see exactly what you need, for me to get to know you and you to get to know me, and see exactly what you need and see if it's a fit for you to go further with me, and if you want to get more help. So no obligation. It's all about whether you want it and whether it's a fit. And I always give help right there. I give direction to you, at least one coping way you can cope through what you're going through. resources if you need it. So that's something you can do to get extra help, because we can't do grief alone. We need one another. I needed that one-on-one help as well as the support group, and it's totally good if you do it too. In fact, you're smart and wise, and it takes strength to do it. Okay, so coming to a close, again, click on this video above to open up the playlist for this series, this is the second to last video in this series. And stay tuned for the how-tos of what to do to help you find purpose, and some of the things that I did and I've learned that people can do to help you really, especially if you're a widow, to help you find your purpose again, and maybe even your identity again, and hope. It helps you find hope, because when you find purpose, it's hope. And I'm telling you, when I lost perspective at times with these two lanes of things, I began to get depressed, and I got to find what I'm doing next soon. And we go through transitions. God takes us through transitions. And so I would get more down when I wasn't as clear about my purpose in these two things. Sometimes the education part was more important with the fentanyl, telling her story, and that was dominant. And other times the grief and support and the helping was more dominant, and sometimes they're right there together. But they've both remained. Right now the grief is the strongest with what I'm working with right now. But I just want you to know that I began to be more down and depressed when I wasn't clear at times with this, or whatever reason. And as soon as I would find clarity again, and I would move forward, even if it was small or one step or one, I got a speaking engagement 2 months from now. Yay, I got to share my daughter's story at a vigil. So just knowing that I got to share her story for 5 minutes, actually that was in front of a crowd of people at our local college. A couple of years ago, when they invited me to do that, I was offering and I was wanting to, and they invited me to, and I ended up meeting somebody else that was part of where God led me, which was Fentanyl Fathers organization. But that was so huge for me. It gave me such purpose and ability to share her story, and people hearing me and validating, and I'm so sorry. It was just a huge piece for me. And I don't know that I had anything much else going on, but I knew in 2 months I was going to be sharing her story, and that gave me purpose, and it gave me hope, and it gave me a forward movement, and it kept me moving. I had to keep moving, and then the purpose would help me move, the things that were manifesting, and it was that continualness. Okay, so that's all I'm going to share in this video. Thank you for listening. Thank you for hearing me. Let me know. Please comment how this touched you, what you feel from this, anything you've learned. I love comments, and I will respond back to you. Maybe sometimes not always the first day, but I will get back to you, because your comments are very valuable to me. Okay, I care about you. I may not know you, but I care about you, and I want to help you. And I hope this channel helps you. So God bless you. I'm Julie Kay, helping you find your way through grief and loss. See you on part 2 of Purpose. Bye.